Welcome to Fresh Off the Set. I'm Carrie Hawker-Diaz.
I'm Kami Stroot, and today's podcast is an exciting one. We are talking about mindfulness with Renee, who's the founder of Wild Women Tribe. What do you do, Carrie, to practice mindfulness?
Oh, I feel like I need to do it every day. I wish I had, even if you take like 5 minutes to practice mindfulness, I feel like it's very rewarding. But I do yoga quite a bit, where I feel like I get a combo of mindfulness and stretching my body and moving my body and just like taking a minute to quiet my brain, which is hard when you're a mom.
Oh my gosh, it's so hard. And I think when people think of mindfulness, they only think about how to be quiet in your mind. It really is mindfulness in your body. It's stretching, it's balance, it's all of that. So I love the mornings. I think you and I as a mother, no, it's quieter. You can have that time. You can just maybe either lay on the couch or you can just do it standing up, making your child's lunch. It just is a moment. Mm-hmm. And then being around nature, there's no excuse here. Mm-hmm. Being from Texas, there was not a whole lot of nature. And here in Utah, just pick a direction.
It's so true. It really is healing just to be out in nature. I know Renee combines a lot of her practices with nature and being outside. And so she has some really good tips on how to just quiet our minds and be one with nature. Should we give it a listen?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
I am so excited to be sitting here with Renee Huang, who is the founder for Wild Women Tribe. Renee, thank you so much for being with us.
It's nice to be here, Laura.
I have talked about this on the show before, but every time you walk into a room or I come talk to you, I immediately feel calmer.
Oh, that's so funny.
So basically, all the mindfulness that you're doing is working because it gives you this calming presence, and it's just so lovely to be around you because it's you're just one of those people that it's I feel comfortable. I feel calm.
Well, thank you. And it's actually not come without a lot of intention. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. All right. So today we're going to talk about mindfulness hacks and all that good stuff on how, you can give us the secrets on how you have such a calming presence. But first, let's start off, talk to us about why you created Wild Women Tribe. How did that come about?
It's so funny because a lot of times we create what we want and what we are looking for, right? Mm-hmm. So it was about 6 years ago, and I was going through personal challenge or transition in my life and was really just feeling this call, this craving to connect with women on a deeper level. I mean, sure, I had my friendships and I had activities and things that I did, but I was just really wanting to get back to nature. And so it was a very organic and very simple desire that I had, and I thought, well, I can't find a group like this, so I'm just going to start one. Yeah. And it was really I sketched the name and the logo out on a napkin or a spare piece of paper that was in my kitchen, sent it over to a girlfriend of mine who's a designer, and she came up with the logo and everything that I still use to this day. And it was just this very easy way of bringing it all together through my own desires.
I love that. And I mean, there are so many stories out there of greatness where people are I had this idea and I put it on a napkin. I feel every amazing story starts with that because it's really that comes from a pure want. And you're I'm doing this right now.
Right. And I knew that I wanted to partner with other women who were coaches and facilitators and create these thematic kind of experiences in nature. And so we just started doing that. And we still do that to this day, the same format for our same day retreats that are called wanders, because we're wandering around in the outdoors. We do that. We go for a mindful hike. We have a coach kind of lead something that's a little bit deeper than surface level interaction. We can talk about boundaries or personal identity or what different flow states are, things that kind of take us beneath the surface of common day interaction. And then we move our bodies as well. So it's kind of this trifecta of body, mind, spirit.
I love that. And so you talked a little bit about, the events that you have. What really does the Wild Women Tribe focus on?
It really focuses on connecting women who are like-minded, who love the outdoors, and who have that craving to go deeper, who want to connect back to themselves, who want to access intuition and awareness and alignment from the inside out. So it's really women who want to change their lives, but who don't want to change the external. It's more about what can I do to evolve and to come back into my own knowing.
I love that. I mean, honestly, what you have created is something that is so beautiful and so powerful. You've been on the show several times, and we're so happy to have you in the podcast room because we actually get to talk longer because really mindfulness You can get a little snippet there for 3.5 minutes. And we've done that before and it's been great. But now we are lucky today because we're going to dive a little deeper. We're going to talk about some mindfulness hacks. Basically, this is fun. These are lessons that you have learned from a horse. Explain this to us really quick before we dive into the specifics.
Yeah, sure. We just had a horse meditation retreat this month in Oakley on a beautiful horse ranch where working with a herd of horses was one of the foundational experiences. So I thought it would be really cute to create kind of like 5 lessons that you can learn from horses because they're so magnificent and they really are present and in their bodies. And they don't really think about how to be a better horse. You know, they're just like doing their thing and being such a good example of what we as humans can pare back, you know, peel back the layers and become.
Yeah, I love it. I've always loved horses. A few years ago, I was going through, you know, some rough things personally, and I started riding horses. I started doing equestrian riding. And just being around horses was just so calming to me. They have a very calming presence, and they're actually used sometimes for healing capabilities. So really, these animals are so magnificent. So it's no surprise to me that we can learn lessons from them. And the first lesson you say we can learn from horses is patience. Talk to me about this.
Right. So like I said, you know, horses don't think about how to be a better horse. They're just patient with themselves. And I think when we can learn to stay in our own lane, when we stop comparing ourselves to others, which is so easy to fall into the trap of with social media.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
just how we are conditioned in society. You know, you have your milestones. What's your 5-year plan? You know, you look at other people. What's it like to be, you know, a grown up? Like we kind of are raised and fed on comparison. And
Absolutely.
feeling like we need to keep up with the Joneses. And so patience with ourselves is really about having that self-compassion to know that you're exactly where you need to be. You don't need to be like Samantha or, you know, who's like killing it at her career and raises 5 kids and, you know, runs all of these other extracurricular activities. Like it's really about knowing yourself on a deeper level and learning that when you can accept yourself and you can really truly love yourself where you are, mistakes and all, that's when you can really, I think, become more in tune with yourself and strip away that external validation, that seeking, that anxiety that comes along with feeling like you're never good enough.
I love that. There's a quote that I heard once that said, you know, if you hunger for validation, you will be starving your whole life.
That's a great one.
Because, and like you said, that's just what we're accustomed to. We have been comparing ourselves since we were little. I mean, I had a baby 3 months ago, and they are already saying things like, well, compared to other kids his age, and you hear that constantly. So to be able to, you know, think like a horse, be patient with yourself, and, you know, we're all perfectly imperfect. And it's just, we're all so different, and that's what makes the world such a beautiful place is celebrating differences. So of course you're going to be different than the person next to you, and that's a beautiful thing.
Well, and that's the thing about things like social media, because they create this fictitious world that we look to, that we think we need to measure up to, when really like self-satisfaction comes from within. No one can tell you you're worthy. No one can actually build you up to feel the value that you want to feel except for yourself.
That's beautiful.
Right. And so when we outsource all of that, when we ask our partner to tell us that we're beautiful enough or smart enough or, you know, creative enough, or when we expect our work to validate us in that way, like we're really just giving our own power away.
Oh, okay. I never even thought about that.
We are outsourcing instead of insourcing. And so when we're patient with ourselves and really like seek our alignment from the inside out, we're becoming bulletproof because we don't need that external anymore, because we're like drawing from a deeper fountain.
Yeah, I love it. Well, and when you think about horses, since we're learning these lessons from them, if a horse wins a blue ribbon, it's for the person who rode, not the horse. The horse doesn't care about the blue ribbon.
Exactly. He's like, just give me more carrots and apples.
Exactly. I love it. So the next lesson we can learn from horses is to breathe.
Right. Like if you ever look at horses standing in the paddock, a lot of times they're just there and they have this presence and they are taking up space And when we are rushing around, chained to our desks and looking at our phones and our schedules, and we're not even present in the act of like taking our kids to soccer, going grocery shopping, or folding the laundry, like we are just kind of skimming through life in a disembodied way. And so breathing is really one of the things I've learned to come back to myself, because I used to do, and I think I still do, a lot of shallow breathing. Like if you think of how we kind of move through the world, we don't really take deep breaths.
Oh, no.
Right. And so breathing, and there's so many different aspects of breathing as well. There's like 1,001 different ways to do breath work. There's like very activating breath work that kind of energizes and moves a lot of energy through you. There's also breath work that is very deep and can take you into episodes of extreme release of emotions. But I think just as a whole on a day-to-day, like if we can acclimatize our bodies more and come back to our bodies through breath, even just normal breathing or taking, 3 breaths before you leave your car and go into a meeting or something, like bringing yourself back into your body is really important for mindfulness, because then you're actually creating more clarity.
Yeah.
As opposed to just like rushing through and checking off the boxes and not being there in the experience.
Absolutely. It was a few years ago, I saw a massage therapist and they asked me to take a deep breath in. And I did, and my diaphragm went in. And they were like, actually, when you take a deep breath in, your diaphragm is supposed to go out. And that was shocking to me. And they're like, it's very common in the world to take that deep breath and suck in, but you're not getting that. And that's just what we're used to because we're rushing around, and that's almost like a shallow breath.
Right, and we think, breathe in, so we think like it should go in, but actually it's a balloon. Yeah. Our lungs are these balloons, and so when you do take a deep breath from your diaphragm, like your abdomen expands.
Yeah. And and I had to think about that because then when I got pregnant, 360 breathing was so important, that's what it is. You think about, wrapping your entire body in this breath, and it was something that I hadn't really realized until I was being told, because like you said, we're so used to just shallow breathing. That's our life, one thing to the next, and we're just hurry, 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 and our breathing ends up that way.
Right, and then our mood ends up that way. We're frenetic, we're chaotic, we're not anchored, and we feel like kind of this frenzy, and when we can slow ourselves down and actually like take up space and slow down, less is more. That's what we were talking about before we started recording. Less is actually more, because then it allows us to make decisions from a place of being grounded as opposed to being like out of our minds.
Which this is all really great advice for me, because I usually am slightly out of my mind I'm just someone, and I've talked about this on the podcast several times. It's not something I'm ashamed to talk about. I'm someone that deals with a lot of anxiety. I always have. And so I do live in a constant state of like, anxiety simmer is what I call it. And I have found that breathing and letting myself take up space helps so much. I mean, horses are huge and they don't care. They're going to take up that space. Like the horse that I rode, I loved him. His name was Elvis, and he was a giant brown horse. He was super lazy, but he didn't care. That was who he was. And he took up that space. And I even remember it was called cantering, but cantering on him when we would run, it was just his breathing would keep me relaxed as we were doing something so intense.
Well, and I think I want to give you credit for talking about your anxiety, because it's like these things that we're trained to think are shameful that we hide. And then, we realize, wow, like the majority of the world is walking around with similar challenges. So when we can speak into them and own them and be like, this is a challenge that I'm learning mindfulness hacks to work through so that I can, show up better for myself, you give others permission. So I want to really say how,
thank you.
how amazing it is, to have conversations like that normalize it, because it's like when you can speak into those things that you feel like are going to make you less than, they actually make you more than, because people are like, I can relate to you. Yeah. Me too. I feel that same way.
Yeah. No one goes through life unscathed. No one goes through life without a struggle. And that's what these tips are there for, to help us, be more mindful through life. And so that brings me to this next thing is boundaries, which is another thing that is so hard for so many people. And specifically because this is the Wild Women tribe, I feel like boundaries can be really hard for women.
Yeah, I mean, I think I grew up and led my entire life as a people pleaser, feeling like my worth was also tied to my capacity to say yes and just make sure other people were happy. And so boundaries have been a work in progress, and it's something I'm still working on. And I feel like it will be, an evolution throughout my whole life.
Yes.
And learning how to state your boundaries clearly. Well, first of all, learning what your yeses and your nos are extremely important. And for me, it's involved a lot of, slowing down and breathing, and then also tuning into my body. So instead of feeling like I need to have an immediate answer, I can take some time and take some breaths. And actually, I have different energy centers that I tune into, not just my head. I have my head and my heart and my gut and then my root, and just kind of checking in with all four. Sometimes there's different answers that my energy centers will give me, but then knowing what your yeses are and being able to say an emphatic yes. And if it's not an emphatic yes for something, then it's actually a no. And so learning how to communicate no's in a graceful way without apologizing for ourselves, that's a foundation, I would say, of Wild Women Tribe, giving women that empowerment to say, you know what, clear. When you are clear, you're kind, because then you're telling people, this is how you can show up for me. And people who care about you, who love you, want to show up for you.
Absolutely. And I say I'm a recovering people pleaser. I feel like I love it. It was my world. I feel like growing up in the dance world, it very much was, I was, pleasing a lot of people as I was performing to get that high score. I mean, I loved doing that, but that was a big aspect of it. And I also heard this quote a little bit ago. I was doing an exercise class, and the person who was teaching it said, if it is not a heck yes, then it's a no.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so it was just like you said. And I think too, I feel like sometimes, and I mean, I'm interested to what you have to say about this, is sometimes boundaries change at different aspects in your life. Sometimes your boundary could be here, and then something could change and your boundaries change.
Absolutely. And being able to be clear in your communication and say, actually, let's revisit this boundary because it's shifted for me now. That's another way of being clear and kind to those around you.
Yeah. And sometimes your boundaries change because you can give more at a certain point in your life than at another time. So it's really important, to look about those, to look at the things that we talked about before, patience and breath, to be calm and within yourself, to know exactly what those boundaries are.
Right. And I think when it comes to boundary work, there can often be a misconception of boundaries are what you tell other people to do. I don't want you to do this to me, or I don't want you to do that. But it's really about yourself. Yeah. It's really about expressing what will happen in a certain circumstance. So if you hug me without asking, or if you speak to me in that tone, then I will leave the room. Yeah. So it's not about saying outwardly, this is how I want you to treat me. It is what you are going to then do, the action you're going to take if something crosses your boundary.
And I really think sometimes in our minds, like you talked about earlier about being a people pleaser, we think setting a boundary is weak, but it's actually a real sign of strength.
Absolutely.
It is the sign of strength that you care enough about yourself, and truly you care enough about other people to be honest with them.
Right, to communicate to them clearly.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk about the fourth thing, movement. To me, movement is medicine. I've always said this, love it. I talked about being a dancer. Exercise is extremely important to me. What can we learn about horses and movement?
Well, if you look at horses, when they prance around and take off running at top speed, I mean, they're really in their bodies and they're really expressing their fullest joy. And I think for me, movement has become one of those things that I crave every week. I dance several times a week, and it's been this way of moving energy and just celebrating my body and feeling like there are emotions and there's things that are stirred up. But really, when you just move them through your body, it's all okay. You don't have to label them. You don't have to judge them. And movement can be anything from dance to walking to, there's even lots of somatic exercises where you shake or you jump or you move your body around. And it's really just that idea of moving the energy.
I love that. It's like I said, movement is medicine. I've always thought that. I mentioned before, I was a dancer for a very long time, got hurt. And it was really hard for me to find another form of movement because movement was everything to me. And so it opened up a whole new world of so many other ways that I can move, through cycling, through running, through walking. I mean, I was moving when I was on a horse. It was a little different, but truly movement is such a gift.
Well, and I love that you say movement is medicine. That's actually a hashtag that we used during the summer. We had a 21-day dance challenge.
Oh, I love it.
So it was literally like, put a song on. It was like hashtag a dance a day. So just dance one song a day and hold yourself accountable. And the beauty behind that is that people found that as they were diving into it, you know, some days they didn't actually want to move. They're like, well, I was sad today, or, you know, I was angry, I was busy. But when you commit to a practice and you actually do it, like, it was quite astounding to see how the movement actually accessed so much more for people, like moving on the days you didn't feel like doing it, but doing it anyway. Then you're like, wow, the movement actually allowed me a doorway through which to pass through those emotions that I was stuck in.
Yeah.
So really movement is a way of unsticking yourself from things that are holding you stagnant.
I love that. And even if, you know, you're just sitting at your desk and you feel like you haven't moved in a while, you can just move your arms.
You can move your arms, you can get up and stand on the ground and do what's called a heel strike, where you stand on your tippy toes and then you just like let your heels drop to the ground. And that's like, I don't remember what it's called, but in the somatics world, that is like driving the energy out of your body because it's actually going down into the earth.
Oh, that's lovely. There are just so many different ways. And I had, like I said, I got injured and I wasn't able to go through the dance path that I wanted to. And when I was injured, I couldn't really move my legs. So moving my arms and moving my core was a huge thing for me. There are just so many ways that you can move and just really feel better.
Right. And when you can do it without the judgment of, am I doing this right? Do I look cool? Is this like what the kids are doing? You know?
I have no idea what the kids are doing. TikTok shows me some things, but I cannot keep up, but we try.
But what it is it's the relationship that you have with your own body, right? And I think that's the honoring that becomes really important through this daily practice. It's like you, yourself, your body, and your own celebration that doesn't have anything to do with what it looks like on the outside to anyone else.
Absolutely. All right. And the final lesson that we can learn from horses, well, the final lesson we're going to talk about today, I'm sure there's plenty, is to listen.
Right. So listening deeply, I think, is something that can help not only our relationship with ourselves, but with others as well. If you think about it, you know, how many times do you go into a conversation and you're not even really present because the person's talking and your mind is going about how you can validate them or add to the story or, you know, what else you can say. And so I think listening is just such a foundational relationship tool all around, you know, and just allowing someone to have the luxury of your presence, of just actually taking in their words and saying, wow, I hear you. You know, and it's not about comparison and it's not about one-upping and it's not about offering a solution. It's just about listening. It can be a really beautiful gift to give to someone else to show that you're really there with them in their experience.
I mean, in today's world with social media, I think it's very seldom you actually have a real conversation with someone. So if you get that chance, if that is happening, listening is such a gift, like you said.
Right, and being able to do it, like active listening, where you're just holding the space, you're making eye contact, you're nodding, and you're not offering some sort of solution or response or action, you know, I think that can be really beautiful. And it's not common, so people might not really know how to take that, but I think in the long term, you know, they'll feel like, wow, that person actually saw me and heard me and didn't try to change me or fix me, right?
I love it. I mean, since we're talking about horses, they sit there. They can't talk back. I mean, if someone has a talking horse, that's fascinating, and I would love to meet you. But they can't, and their cute little ears point up, and you can tell that they're listening because they kind of like flutter a little bit.
And they make eye contact.
Yeah.
They make great eye contact. And then listening to yourself is also such a beautiful aspect, you know, and that goes along with just slowing down, giving yourself time. Like, think of how little time we actually normally give ourselves to just be, you know, and that was it still is one of my challenges. When I have things on my mind, I find that I schedule myself and I keep myself busy because it's almost like if I have a space in my schedule to just be with myself, then all of a sudden I'm with my own thoughts, right? Which is actually quite necessary for us to grow and evolve and process and learn. So listening to ourselves and learning how to do that, I think, is also foundational.
And it's not selfish, because again, I think that's something that we maybe get in our way of, to sit down and take time to listen to yourself. It's so crucial to have that alone time with yourself because of all these things that we've talked about. But you need to listen to yourself to know when you need to breathe, to know when you need to set boundaries, to know when you need to move. All of these things, listening is really the pinnacle of that. So you can listen to yourself and know what you do need.
Right. And to create the space for yourself in order to listen and show up for yourself is, like you said, it's not selfish. It's for yourself, you know, or even I think a better way to look at it is to reframe selfishness, because we have such a judgmental view of it, like, oh, if you're selfish, if you're serving yourself, then you're self-centered or you're not kind. But really, like, at the end of the day, you're the only one who can change your life. Yeah. You're the only one who can change your perspective, right? Like, when you can devote precious time for yourself, you're actually doing such a huge favor for not only yourself, but all of the relationships around you. Because when you can find your center and your empowerment and your alignment from within, then that's the point from which you can influence everyone else in your life.
I mean, you spend more time with yourself than you spend with anyone else. So you want to make, your mind a good home for yourself.
Yeah, and but like repair and heal that notion that if you're not doing constantly, then you're not good enough. Or if you're not helping other people or serving other people, then, you don't have a utility, you don't have a function. It's like really a lot of self-healing that begins with loving yourself. It comes down to self-love, being like, you know what, you deserve to go and sit in the garden or take a bath or read a book or just like have time that is unscheduled for you to just be.
I think that's beautiful. Like I've mentioned with anxiety, it is very hard to get my mind to calm down and even more difficult to allow myself to self-love. That's always been something that I've struggled with, and it's something that you just need to work on. So, if you're listening to this podcast and, you've been in a place where you don't feel like you can do these things, you really can, because everyone is deserving of them.
Absolutely. And it takes practice, and it's not even practice makes perfect. It's just like practice makes things seem easier. And the more you do things, the more they become a muscle that is stretched in your day to day. And so practicing that compassion, practicing that allowance, practicing that patience just means that it'll become easier and easier for you. And you'll see the results because you will be pouring back into yourself as opposed to like being like a sieve where everything's just draining out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've been through the 5 things that we can learn from horses. Renee, is there anything you want to add before we wrap up?
I think just that women take a lot on. Everyone does, men and women do, but I think like women, we feel like in order to be successful in this world, we have to be everything.
Yes.
The best mother, the best friend, the best daughter, the best coworker. Like we just kind of go to the ends of the earth to serve other people. And I think it would be to encourage women, like you said, if you relate to this, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling like you're so lonely because you're the only one holding up everything, you are not alone. We are going through so much as a society, as a community. And so being brave like you are, and speaking up and saying the things that you need help with is foundational, and creating the space for yourself is important. And there's groups like Wild Women Tribe. There's lots of other women's groups. There's women's circles and things that you can do. Or if you just get out and walk around your block for 30 minutes every day, like you are worth it and you deserve to have that feeling that you can come into alignment and you are the creator of your own reality.
I think that's beautiful and a great way to wrap up this podcast, Renee. Thank you so much again for coming in, and thank you for following your intuition and your heart and your dreams and creating the Wild Women Tribe. I know it has blessed so many women's lives. Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who is listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe, and we will catch you next time.
Congrats, you made it to the end. If you want to continue to freshen up your day, you can watch us on Fresh Living every weekday on CBS Channel 2 in Utah at 1 o'clock. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel, KUTV Fresh Living, and follow us on social media. We will see you next week.